has been over on North Beach a lot lately. They've been sucking sediment out of the clogged stormwater pipes and digging out stormwater drain infalls that have been buried in mud since we've lived here the past 20 years. So thank you for providing a level of service that can be described as basic city services that our taxes and our utility bills already pay for. But do not be mistakenly believing that uncovering those infalls has solved the flooding and ponding. Do not think that the system is now functional. Rather, what it has done is pinpointed the problems. Now we can watch even more clearly as the salty bay water backs up through this low-lying pipes and floods our streets with salt water again and again. Elevating the land and sloping it towards a central drainage canal, in other words, abandoning this dysfunctional underground system and building a more resilient and sustainable drainage solution is the direction that the city needs to go. And that's what you're going to hear about when LAN brings back its Phase 2 study or report next month, hopefully, or the following month, and you're going to have those choices in front of you. The underground conduit system that we have today should be completely abandoned. Please don't think that that is useful in the least. We would be better off right now without it, because all it does is flood our neighborhood. It doesn't absorb rainwater. It just brings bay water up into our streets. And I have video after video showing that. So thanks to the city for coming over and doing basic city services, but I urge you to continue on the path with the drainage canal and elevating the land. Thank you for your service to our city.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer, for your comment. Have a good day. Mayor, that concludes our public comment today.
Are we, right?
No, well, our public comment that we receive is in writing.
You sent it in writing?
Okay, we're double checking.
Okay. What's that?
Are you sure? Okay. Mayor, we did not receive one,
What was
a
it?
written public comment.
Okay. Dr. Scott, so you submitted something, you're saying, or you did not? Online. Okay. Okay, so what are our options?
Well, we're not, public comment right now per COVID is written public comment or call-ins. Yeah, I'm not sure how, I'm not sure. So those are the two options. We weren't allowing in person. Let's see. Oh, did we go? Yeah, those are received through the city secretary's office, and it's 5 minutes after the meeting starts is the deadline, so. Well, we can give her a form if she would like, or it's up to you.
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay.
Sure. No. And there could have been a glitch, but go ahead and you're here and we've got the form, so. Are you getting the form or you have one here? Okay, should we go ahead and do your, can we come back, Rebecca, Ms. Wadena? Can we come back to the comment? Okay, great. So, Mr. Zanoni, would you like to go ahead and do your city manager's report?
Yes, that'd be great, Mayor. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so Mayor and members of the council and the listening community and members of the audience, today we're going to focus on North Beach. And we just heard from Carrie Myers, who's a resident and a community leader there. Mm-hmm. And So we're glad to talk about 5 things that are taking place on North Beach. I want to bring everybody up to speed on these. That includes the North Beach drainage feasibility study that's being conducted. I want to update you on txdot's drainage improvements at the 181 turnaround on the north part of the peninsula. Show you a couple of some footage and talk to you about the community Lighthouse Point multifamily community that's there in the lighthouse. I know several council members were there recently. A 4th item to bring you up to speed on is the North Beach bathroom that was included in the bond program project. And then Tom Schmidt is here today, and he'll conclude with the 5th item, which is an update on the Texas State Aquarium, their overall operations, as well as a $15 million new rescue center, of which the city in our bond program is contributing $3 million to that total project. Mm-hmm. And so we know that North Beach is not only important to the North Beach community, like Carrie Myers, but really to the entire city, the whole city. And I know the city council and the leadership team embraces North Beach. We're looking forward to its revitalization, and it's a unique part of our city that we all embrace. Now, yesterday, this is in City Council District 1, and Councilman Lerma and I spent a good hour going over this material as well. And I want to highlight that as well. We know that Councilman Lerma is a champion of North Beach, and he's worked hard already in his few months on council advocating for and making sure we get things done on North Beach. So let me begin with the North Beach drainage feasibility study. In January, our local engineering firm, LAN, briefed City Council on the results of their first study that was done to determine the project scope and whether a navigable canal would be a suitable drainage facility, and would it be navigable? Could you have a boat on it? At the meeting, staff received policy direction from the City Council to have LAN develop cost estimates for 3 drainage solutions to include the navigable canal, another alternative, a smaller canal, an open channel linear park type system, and then third, a closed brand new conduit system. We know that the conduit system that's there today is inadequate. There's no intentions to keep that, just for the record. We know that it needs to be abandoned, and in fact, in either of these 3 scenarios, no parts of the current underground system is usable, according to LAN. I think we know that without even asking them. So because of that direction from City Council, LAN in March began the step to do cost estimates, probable cost estimates. That was a $124,000 contract, by the way, just to let the community know we're investing still in North Beach. A draft, what we call a technical memo, will be provided to the engineering department later this month for us to give initial feedback and comment to LAN so that they can finalize their report by May 21. That was what they agreed to. There's no reason to think they won't make that deadline. They're doing a great job. In fact, they started even before the contract was signed to get it done in time. We anticipate then bringing forward to City Council their report, which would be the first council meeting in June 8th. Okay, so that's going to be an important date for the council and the community because the council will be given the policy choice to kind of give direction on how to proceed with ultimately fixing the drainage on North Beach. Now, another drainage issue that is the Texas Department of Transportation is a smaller one. You can see here, it's the turnaround under the 181 bridge, and to get to that brand new $25 million community, you have to cross this. And so txdot is working to take care of the situation. They bid out a scope of work in March, and they have selected a contractor, Beck Wright, to actually do the construction work. If we advance the pictures here, we'll see. You can see some of the flooding. This is from either coastal flooding or if there's a rain event, it doesn't drain properly. The next picture will show us, you can see kind of towards the top, there's red lines. They'll put 3 different conduit pipes out to the bay, as well as street, you can't see them in this picture, but street grates that'll help to absorb the water and then take it out to the bay. The work is expected to begin in June, and it should be completed by the end of August. While this is a txdot project, the city's Public Works Department is monitoring it pretty closely. We're in touch with txdot because we want to make sure they get it done soon because of this long outstanding condition. Now, right across that roadway, we all know is the La Vista, well, the Lighthouse Point is the new name, the Lighthouse Point. It's a $25 million multifamily community. And we're going to show some video here while I talk through this one. There'll be 159 luxury apartments there. Many of them are already built, and some are actually filled with tenants at this point. There's 8 townhomes, a marina, there'll be a restaurant, a chapel, and a banquet hall, and the signature Fraser Lighthouse that will be a landmark entrance into our city. That footage is pretty phenomenal. Lynn Fraser has taken this drone footage through the construction period, but you can see the project is nearing completion. It started in July of 2019, and it'll be done by June of this year. It's a $25 million project, as we mentioned, and the lighthouse that we may see a little footage of here was funded by the city at a cost of $625,000 from Type B funds. The lighthouse is going to be 135 feet tall from sea level, and it's constructed from nearly 2,000 tons of stone sourced from Granbury, Texas. That's going to make that height of 135 feet will make the lighthouse the tallest lighthouse in Texas and the tallest stone lighthouse in the United States of America. So we're going to have some signature highlights with that lighthouse. 50 apartments have been completed so far on this development, and residents have begun to move into the complex. And earlier this month, I know Councilman Lermer and several other council members were there to see the progress of the lighthouse. You can see it there. And several other members of the community were there as well. We're going to transition now to a little further north on the peninsula, close to the Texas State Aquarium, and we're happy to talk about the North Beach restroom and parking and playground facility. And so this is a $2.5 million project, and we have some slides that we're going to transition to for this one. It's a $2.5 million project that the voters approved as part of the 2020 bond program. And North Beach has 2 dated restroom facilities, permanent facilities. You can see in this picture, the ones closest to, or the 2 white kind of structures in the middle. Let me circle that. Closest to the beach, those are a handicap ADA restroom, and then the older restroom that's been there for many years. About 2 years ago, they were boarded up and pretty much shut down. We put some minimal investment in there, knowing that we'd have an item in the bond program, and to have running water and appropriate commodes and so on. So with the new paint job and everything, they're okay for the next year until the new one is built. They'll be demolished, so you can see one issue with them is when you come in either way over here, the first thing you see is the restroom instead of the beach. We want to be able to see the beach and the ocean. And so part of the program includes demolishing these 2 restrooms and building a brand new one that will be elevated to meet the velocity zone. Also here is a playground, and we're going to show you a design schematic of how we want to bring that closer to the beach. So you have kind of a 2-for-1. You can have families enjoying the beach, but they could also just get off the beach slightly and enjoy a playground that'll have picnic tables and barbecue pits. And then the restrooms will be right here. We're going to show you, if we advance this next slide. Yeah, okay, let me just clear this. So this is the tentative, and we've worked with Carrie Myers and the North Beach Neighborhood Association. So this is not finalized, but it does include input from Carrie, Neiman Young, and myself. Spent over an hour with Carrie on site a couple of weeks ago, and we've been sending Carrie so that she can share them with the community there, various schematics of these as we've evolved. But you can see this is the beach over here, and so the new restroom location here, new parking would be up here, away from any pedestrian activity, so that people feel safe when they're walking from the playground to the beach and so on. So the blue area would be the playground. We'd basically, this blue area, we would take the playground from up here today and move it here so that you have access to the beach, and you can use the playground facility and or the beach almost simultaneously or one after the other. This is the new restroom location. It's not on the beach, but it's not too terribly far away as well. You'd have both roads would remain open with 2-way traffic, and then down here in this one, Persons can drop off individuals, maybe young children or persons with disabilities, and then progress back out to the parking lot. So that's the current schematic. I don't know if there's another slide on that one at all. Oh, yep, okay. Here's the design of the new restroom facility, and Carrie and the community, as well as the city, is happy with it. You can see it's elevated. The bottom level will have velocity zone breakaway material that's required, but it will be closed up, so there won't be a place for hanging out or vagrants or snakes or whatever. And then the facility, here are the doors for the men and women's restroom. And it's an open floor plan, which is something that the community wanted. Today, the restrooms have individual stalls with a private door, and that can lead to some behavior that we don't want on North Beach or anywhere for that matter. And so the floor plan includes an open floor plan with stalls and sinks and so on. And I don't know if we have one more slide to show. Okay, and so at the playground, our design firm that we're using, MIG, that has national experience, is recommending that we use some context-sensitive type material rather than the traditional plastic playground material that you might see. And so these are just examples, but we're looking to do something at the playground that is contextually relevant. So this example here uses waves made out of a concrete structure. The next slides show a few other ones as well of what we might want to put in that playground area, if you can advance the slide. Okay, there's another one. You can see some of these big shells. And so these type of a playground system, according to the consultant, lets children use their imagination, gives them physical activity. The cat here is a nice one made with little tile. This one is it's an example of what could be there to have the children use their imagination and play while they're on the beach. The playground would have seating and barbecue pits as well, and offer a nice addition to what's there today. So this Friday, Neiman is going to meet with Carrie Meyer to show the final design sketch that we have to date, and hopefully we'll reach conclusion. And then we'll have MIG finalize their kind of pre-design. We brought this firm on early to fast-track this project. It's not unusual here lately. We're trying to get things done as quick as we can. So MIG is doing some preliminary design. Once they're done with their final design work, we'll do a design bid for this item. We expect that we'll be advertising for the design bid in mid-May of this year. And hopefully the facility will be done probably within the next year, I would imagine. It's not that big of a project. Okay, so those are 4 projects. So we talked about the drainage solution that we're working on North Beach, the 181 turnaround drainage solution. We got an update on the multifamily community there that's coming up, the $25 million community, and then talked about the restroom and parking lot, which is the 4th item. We're going to have Tom Schmidt finish out the update on North Beach, and he's going to talk about the progress of the Texas State Aquarium. But before he does speak, I'd like Councilman Lerma just to say a few words. He said he and I yesterday said, let me have you close out my portion before Tom Schmidt comes up to talk. So Councilman Lerma.
Thank you, Peter. I greatly appreciate it. I want to say thank you to you and your staff for dedicating your time and listening to the residents of North Beach. It's been a long due process, but we're getting there, and I greatly appreciate it. And I know the citizens of North Beach greatly appreciate it, even though, we call them citizens of North Beach, but really, they're citizens of Corpus Christi, and we need to change that culture, that they're part of the city, and by us and yourself spending the time and listening and getting things done, these are small projects, we understand that, but it's an improvement, and that's the important part of it. It is an improvement, we're moving forward on North Beach, and it's greatly appreciated by everybody. Things are happening pretty quick in North Beach right now, and that's awesome. I've lived here, like I said, all my life, and things have always been very, very slow in getting things accomplished, but you're dedicating your time and your staff to get these things done for these people in the North Beach area. I want to thank Lynn Frazier especially. It's not easy to go out and just spend $25 million out of your own pocket, The development of the Fraser Lighthouse is awesome. You know, I invite the council and the mayor to go out and take a look at it and stand just in the middle of it, and it's not even halfway there, and how huge it is. You know, one of the greatest things about it, it's going to be a historical monument for Corpus Christi's future, because there's not another one like it in the entire country. It'll be the largest stone-built lighthouse in the country, and that's awesome. I think that's going to be a tourist attraction, so it's going to help in the redevelopment of North Beach. You know, so I want to thank him, and I definitely want to thank Kerry Myers for being persistent and making sure things get done for the residents of North Beach. You know, she really knows the history of North Beach. Anyone that doesn't know it needs to go over there and have a chat with her. She'll grab your ear for 2 or 3 hours, but I just want to thank her personally, you know, because of her persistency in believing that North Beach will be a big tourist attraction for the city of Corpus Christi. You know, the bathhouses are going to be a great improvement out there. I love the concept of it, that it's going to be away from the beach to where the safety's also in there, where the parking will be behind it, to where none of the children are involved or people that are walking to the beach have to cross any kind of traffic. You know, once again, I just want to say thank you for your dedication and listening to us. You know, we're going to move forward. We're going to make sure that North Beach gets the proper drainage, and it will thrive and make Corpus Christi a destination to come to. So once again, I want to thank everyone that's been involved.
Thank you, Councilman.
Great, thank you.
And quickly, is Ms. Myers, is she working with you in the capacity of the North Beach group?
Yes, yeah, there's
Just-
the North Beach Neighborhood Association. I have, let me see, the North Beach Community Association,
Community, right.
NBCA.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's, we're working, she has probably 3 hats. One, just as Carrie Meyer, and then 2, representing some of the homeowners that live right next to the new restroom. So she's personally gone to 2 homeowners, one who's in the process of building a $600,000 brand-new home,
Right.
and another gentleman. So she's helping us communicate with those 2 folks.
Sure.
And then also she's representing the community association. So those 3 capacities,
Okay.
yes,
She
is what
is
she's working.
representing-
She's actually the secretary of the association, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're
Councilman?
glad she's there. We had a real nice visit with her, and Neiman, he's going to visit with her this Friday to show her the final drawings that we have.
Great.
Good.
Okay.
So if you will, just indulge us for a few more minutes on North Beach. Tom is going to give us a quick update on one of the main attractions over there that we all love, the Texas State Aquarium.
Well, thank you all so much for giving me a couple of minutes. I don't live on North Beach, but I will tell you, over the last 25 years, I've spent an incredible amount of time on North Beach. So it's, I'm happy to see all the attention that's focused on it. We've had I would say, an eventful first quarter at the Texas State Aquarium. We started the year off really strong. January, we had over 30,000 visits, 30,000 people visiting the aquarium. It was the busiest January in our 30-year history, and it was a great way to start the year after a really challenging 2020. And then came, of course, February and Winter Storm Uri. So we, in anticipation of road closures and the aquarium closing, we established a ride-out team similar to what we do during hurricanes, and they stayed at the aquarium throughout the storm. They also prepared for what we were anticipating would be a pretty significant sea turtle cold stunning event. If I could have the next slide, please. And that's exactly what happened. Along the entire Texas coast, over 13,000 cold stunned sea turtles were recovered. Unfortunately, most of those did not make it. Many of them were DOA. Collectively, all of the institutions along the Texas coast were able to release about 4,000 turtles. We admitted about 1,600 at our Wildlife Rescue Center, which is the largest amount that we've ever dealt with at one time, and we were able to release about 1,000 of those animals. It really was a multi-agency, multi-partner program. We had federal agencies, NOAA, National Marine Fisheries, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, on a state level, Texas Parks and Wildlife. Locally, the Sea Life Center, the ARC, Marine Spill Response, the Port, and certainly the city of Corpus Christi. And I want to thank Peter, and I know Neiman's here, where Neiman was here. Both were helpful, particularly as we were looking at some disposition issues with some of the turtles. So I appreciate their help and that partnership. Next slide. It was certainly a challenging period, but I think it was also rewarding for our teams. We got media coverage from all over the country, really internationally. I think it helped elevate our program, and more importantly, though, I think it began to position the Coastal Bend really as a center for sea turtle conservation, both statewide and nationally. Next slide. So as we were moving into March, we got ready to launch a new marketing campaign, and the goal of the campaign really was to build some awareness, or build more awareness about our wildlife rescue efforts, and just remind our guests that when they're visiting the aquarium, they're actually helping save sea turtles and other animals in the wild. Next slide. It was very successful. We saw over 80,000 visits during the month of March. It was the busiest March in our 30-year history. We set records for spring break, so 57,000 people over the spring break period. To put that in perspective, a good year for us is 570,000 people. So it was a busy month, but a great month, and that trend is continuing in April. We're projecting to see about 50,000 visits, attendance in April, and this will make it the busiest April we've had on record. I'm optimistic for the summer. I think that bodes well for our sales tax collection, our hotel occupancy tax collection. So we're bullish on 2021. Next slide. Peter did mention the Center for Wildlife Rescue. So when we approached the city last year, we had raised about $6 million toward this project. As Peter mentioned, we had a successful Bond 2020 program. The citizens of Corpus Christi voted to support the project, which produced another $3 million. That brought us up to $9 million. We're now at a little over $12 million. So we're getting near the finish line. We've matched dollar for dollar all the funds that the citizens have put forward, and we anticipate finishing up the campaign and starting construction this summer. So we're excited that project is moving ahead full speed. Next slide. Just a quick exhibit programming update. We've got a new temporary exhibit that will be online this summer, focused on the problem of plastic pollution in our ocean. As we're thinking about Earth Day this year, or this month, and this week actually, and World Ocean Day coming up in June, I think the focus of removing as much plastic off our beaches is a really important one for the city and the aquarium to align up on. And we have some sculptures from a really gifted artist down in South Padre that collects trash from Texas beaches and produces these amazing sculptures. We've got the National Geographic Planet or Plastic exhibit coming online. It's the first time it's been shown in the U.S. It's in Singapore right now, en route to Corpus Christi. We're also going to be showcasing some of the work of our local leaders, like Jace Tunnel at UTMSI and the ARC and NEAR, focusing on the Nurdle project, as well as what industry is doing, such as ExxonMobil, who is a founding partner of the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. So. Next slide. Finally, I'll leave you with this. Some of our newest residents at the Texas State Aquarium. Many of you may know the American ocelot is really on the verge of extinction. They are the only population left exists in South Texas. We think there could be as few as 50 to 80 of these animals left. And so we're involved with a number of other organizations, other zoos, as well as the Cesar Claiborne Research Institute. Our goal is to establish a breeding population and eventually reintroduce ocelots back into the wild. We're excited about this project. This is kind of a shift from some of our marine conservation work into terrestrial conservation, so we're excited to move forward on that. And these animals will be on display this summer. So, Peter, that's all I've got. I don't know if there's time for questions, but again, I appreciate the opportunity. Councilman, as you mentioned, the investment on North Beach, we've invested well over $100 million. So we're absolutely committed, just like the city is, to see North Beach thrive.
And Tom, can you tell us again, so the Wildlife Rescue Center. Yeah. So where are you now again?
So we've raised a little over $12 million, and the goal is $15 million.
15.
And we've got a good pipeline. I think we're going to be there by June or July.
Wonderful. And isn't this one where the Port of Corpus Christi gave $2.5 million?
Yeah, the Port of Corpus Christi,
Wow.
Gulf Coast Growth Ventures, ExxonMobil. We've gotten funding from the states, from a lot of foundations, individuals. It's been a great campaign.
That's amazing. Okay. And it's funny you mentioned that, the container. I think you said is it a container, the fish, the big fish that we just saw there? that's traveling? Didn't you say that?
Oh, the sculptures?
The
Yeah.
oh, it's a sculpture.
Yeah, they're
Okay,
sculptures,
okay.
yeah, made out of plastic trash collected from South Texas beaches.
Oh, it's made out of trash.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry about
okay.
that. Yeah, you have to come
Wonderful.
over and see it.
I
so,
will, yes, I will, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilman Pusley, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mayor. Thomas, great news, and as a member of the board of the Texas State Aquarium, it's great to see the numbers that you've had in the first quarter. I know last year was a difficult year for your business and a lot of other businesses, so it's great to see those positive numbers, and you guys are doing a great job as always at making that venue a place to visit and one that a lot of people want to come see. So thank you very much for your efforts in that respect.
Thank you.
Mayor, I just want to make a couple of comments here. One, I want to bring to light, we get a lot of criticism about the existing drainage system at North Beach, and no doubt it lacks a lot. But that system was put in place in 1977, so in 1977, I was worried about a lot of things, but it wasn't the drainage system on North Beach, I will assure you. But we all recognize it's inadequate, and we're working hard to get that resolved. I want to thank Richard Martinez and his staff for all the work that they're doing over at North Beach and trying to make that system work as well as you can make it work. And it's obviously inadequate and broken, and you're doing the best you can. And I want to, Peter, say thank you to Richard and his staff, and you and your staff for doing that. I guess I was not aware that the lighthouse was funded by the would you say type B funds?
Yes, sir, Councilman, type B, 650,000.
Okay. Who's going to maintain that facility?
It's the Fraser Group. It's their lighthouse.
They're going to assume maintenance
There'll
responsibility?
be some programming, I believe, with the lighthouse, because the bottom will have like a rotunda you can walk into.
Right,
And then Lynn Fraser will have access to the stairs that take you up to the top.
yeah.
So, yeah. But the city, it's not a city asset. It belongs to them.
Yeah. And Tom, you may not be aware, but the city council here just a few days ago voted to do $1 million project to remove floatables that are going into the water here from our storm water system. So we do recognize the issue, and we're taking steps to try to do our part as well. Peter, if you could go back to the slideshow where you were showing the firm that you're utilizing to design the kids park or whatever it is.
Yeah, let's go to the restroom if we can. A.B. Hopefully they know which one it is. There we go. You want to see the site plan, Councilman?
Yeah, this
Okay.
picture specifically.
This one right here, or the site
Yeah,
plan?
I don't see any kids in that picture.
Go to the next one.
No, I want you to stay right there.
Are
There you
those
go.
I want to make a point here.
Okay.
I want to make a point that whatever these guys come up with in their design, that it's associated with, something kids can do.
But yeah, that next slide will show you a lot of kids.
Yeah. But,
you go.
yeah, we want to make sure that these are things that children can do and not get hurt on.
We agree,
So-
Councilman. Yeah, these are just conceptual ideas. It's just to bring the concept to the table here, which is that we want to do something that's contextually sensitive, instead of
Right.
run-of-the-mill plastic playground equipment.
Yeah.
Let's have
No,
something
I
that,
agree with all that.
Yeah.
I just, want to make sure that at the
Yeah.
end of the day, we end up with something that
Right.
that children can enjoy.
we agree, Councilman.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes. Okay, that concludes the city manager's report, unless there's any other questions.
right. No, I don't
Okay.
believe there is. Thank you, Mr. Zanoni.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to section H, board and committee appointments. Let's see, Ms. Huerta?
Yes, ma'am. We have one board for you today. It's the Corpus Christi Convention and Visitors Bureau. There's one vacancy representing the category of community at large. And the CVB is recommending Ramon Pineda or Lance Hancock for your consideration.
Okay. I'd like to nominate Sarah Morgan.
I'd like to nominate Steve Banta.
Any other nominations? Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Huerta. Would you like to start the vote?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so we can do it. Want to just do roll call?
Sure.
Okay. So first person is Councilmember Lerma.
Banta.
Okay. Martinez. Molina. Mr. Molina, are you
Banta.
online?
Banta.
Did you say Banta? Okay. you
Yes.
did. Okay, thank you. Pusley? Smith, who is absent. Barrera?
Morgan.
Hernandez?
Banta.
Hunter?
This is very tough for me, but I have to go with Banta.
Okay. And Mayor Wahardo.
Morgan.
It's a tie.
Who's going to change their vote?
Might as well just ask that.
Oh, we've done that before.
Nobody? Okay.
So what,
So
should we
it's
flip a
tied.
coin, or? It's a tie, Gil.
Peter, you have to vote.
Okay, well,
It's
I
gotta come
guess-
back.
Yeah,
What's
we're gonna
that?
have
Until-
to,
until
because
we have
it,
9.
we need a majority, and
All
there's
right, well, we'll
8
bring it back
president
to the
voting.
next
They
meeting.
just table to the next
Okay.
meeting, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we need a motion, or you'll just table it? I mean,
Can
no, I
just-
bring it back.
Would you like to make a motion, Mr. Presley?
Make a motion that we table the board appointment to the Corpus Christi Convention Bureau to our next regularly scheduled city council meeting.
All right.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The motion passes.
Okay. Thank you, council.
Terrible. Okay. Yeah. Oh. Well, yes. Someone's got to win, someone's got to lose. That's what I tell Jude every game. Okay, so we'll move on to item J, consent items, number 2 through 18. I'm sorry, is that section
Yes,
Yes.
consent. Mhm.
J? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Would any council member like to pull any items 2 through 18?
Mayor, I'd like to pull item 14, please.
14, okay. Anyone else? Okay. Let's see here. I will go ahead and entertain a motion to approve items 2 through 18, excluding item number 14.
I move to approve.
Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve items number 2 through 18, excluding number 14. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. The motion carries. So item number 14 is, so that is a master services agreement, engineering services for our airport. Good morning, afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, and City Leadership. My name's Kevin Smith. I'm the Airport Director. And I put together a quick presentation, just a slide to kind of outline what this service agreement covers. So if we could just run through it real quick, if that's all right. Next slide. So this contract term is a 5-year base term. It is a not-to-exceed amount. So it doesn't mean we're going to spend $1.5 million a year. It's a not-to-exceed amount. So any projects of any magnitude is going to come back before this council for approval. It replaces a 5-year base term, who happened to be Garver as well. They won the repeat bid, and it was $1.2 million a year prior to this bid. So it went up about $1.5 million over 5 years. Garver's a multidiscipline firm. They do planning, architectural, engineering, environmental, and project management. Next slide. And just to give you an idea of the solicitation process, it was a request for qualifications. We had 11 total bidders, 3 finalists, Garver, Wolpert, and RS&H, all really solid aviation firms. 3 were selected based on qualifications, the firm's experience, the team experience, and the understanding of the projects and scope. And then we did interviews with those final 3. And after the interview scores, Garver was 96.1, Wolpert 89.8, RS&H 87.7. And again, those scores were all based on technical proposal qualifications and the interview. Next slide, please. And the scoring members for those proposals were Isaac Perez, Sandra Gomez, Gina Sanchez, Tyler Miller, and Victor Gonzalez. And then we had 2 non-voting members that sat in on the interviews, and that was Michael Rodriguez and Steve Vieira. Next slide. And these are just some of the projects that Garver did for Corpus Christi International Airport over the last 5 years. An awful lot of runway and taxiway and apron work, totaling $34.3 million. Next slide. And these are some of the exciting projects we have coming up over the next 5 years that we're really, it's really going to change the look and feel of the airport. We're going to start with a new roof so that whatever we do inside is taken care of. Reseal of all the windows. We're going to fix the rental car return. I don't know if any of y'all returned a rental car lately, but it's not the easiest process. So we're going to fix that. We're also going to be redoing all of our restrooms to include a service animal relief area, or a SARA. We'll also have a private nursing room. We're going to be looking at creating that cell phone lot finally. We're going to remove all the TSA baggage screening from the ticket lobby to behind the wall so that customers have more room to spread out in the lobby. And it'll look a lot better as well. We're going to be installing new passenger boarding bridges on all of our jet bridges. And then we have a pretty big project. We're going to have to rehabilitate runway 1836 and all the associated taxiways with that runway. We have to replace the cooling towers, the HVAC system for our airport rescue firefighters, our EMS. It's out in the middle of the field. And then we need to put new switch gears in all of our generators. And then also we've got a pavement project coming up with our ARF building. Again, it's our rescue firefighters. Next slide, please. And just kind of give you an idea of Garver's experience elsewhere. Those are some of the projects they're working on in other cities. They average about 5% under budget on all projects worldwide. And they helped us obtain $24 million in FA funding since 2016. So they're a really solid business partner with CCIA, or they have been in the past. And next slide. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have about the actual contract or proposal.
Thank you. Do we have any questions, council members? Mr. Hernandez?
Mayor, with all deference to Mike Busley, since he's the one that pulled the,
Oh, I thought you did. I'm so sorry. Councilman Busley, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Mayor. And this is not about Garver. I'm familiar with Garver. They're very, very qualified, and I'm certain they will do a good job. And I guess I'm having a little difficulty in how the city does its business here. There are an awful lot of these projects that comes before the council where it says, not to exceed amounts. And those not to exceed amounts when you're dealing with government just makes me a little nervous because I've never seen the government not spend what you allocate. So I'm used to defining things a little more critically and getting down to the brass tacks of what you're trying to do. And a lot of these are broad brush kind of projects. I understand that, but and maybe we budgeted for this at $7.5 million. I wasn't here when the budget was done, but Peter, this comment goes directed to not only this project but a number of other projects where we have approved, not only today, but in the past, where we say, you know, not to exceed this amount, not to exceed that amount. It just makes me a little nervous. So if you don't spend this amount of money, was this total $7.5 million put in the budget at that amount, or is it put in at some less amount? If we don't spend the $7.5 million, are you gonna extract that from the budget? I mean, how does that
Yeah,
work?
so it's, depending on the project, there's different scenarios, but anything that's not spent stays within the fund first. So in the case of the airport, if there's savings in this project, it stays in the airport fund. Next, it could stay within the project budget. The project could increase scope, or there could be a phase 2 of it. And then third, it could fall to fund balance and be reused in some other manner. I think that's probably a simple way of answering it. Depends on what, if we're doing a bond program project or a service agreement in our fleet department.
But this is not a bond project.
No, it's not.
This is coming out of general fund,
No, this is coming out of the airport fund.
out of the airport
Yes,
fund
sir.
totally?
Yeah, this is all airport fund. So in that case, the savings or anything not spent of the 7.5
Will stay
stays
in-
in the airport fund
Okay,
in their capital improvement program, and it will be annually, we update the capital improvement program. So savings that may be achieved through the year, whether it's in construction or this type of a contract, is used for the huge commitment or the huge need that's out there, right? The capital program for airport is about $88 million over a 10-year period.
right.
And so a reprogramming and a reassessment of the capital budget's done annually, so savings will go back towards any one of those projects.
Okay. And I agree, all the things that Mr. Smith mentioned on this list are very well needed at the airport. You have to continually upgrade your airport to stay competitive, and I realize that. But I want to get a little better comfort level with the
Right.
fact that we use this all the time, where we say we're going to spend up to this amount, and we're allocating it, and we're not really delineating what we're going to spend that money on, so.
Right.
Councilman, I'd like to point out that we have in our charter a very important rule of fiscal responsibility that requires that the finance director certify the amount of funds. So when you see those do not exceed amounts, you see the amount that ends up getting certified. And our goal is in that fiscal year, and our goal is to avoid spending those dollars twice accidentally. It's an important rule that we're complying with.
Okay. No, I understand that, but, okay.
And one more point, it is just I know it's a lot of money. It's 1.5 million a year, so this is a 5-year program.
Right.
And some of this funding will be coming from the FAA, so it's not in our budget. It will be appropriated by the FAA, and Garver will help us get those funds.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about aviation, is that txdot has all these great funds and great grant programs that you can take advantage of.
Yes,
So,
sir.
thank you. Anyway, thank you
Great.
very much. I appreciate the information. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Hernandez, I think you have a comment.
Thank you. And this kind of piggybacks on what Councilman Pusley had been mentioning, is that this kind of gives us a spend to amount, right? But we don't know what happens if it's underneath that or over that. And which doesn't give us visibility as a council to where money's spent. Now, I understand finance will know where it's at, but I'm talking about where council knows where it's at in terms of what that funding is. And this is one of the biggest issues I had with our capital improvement budget, or CIP budget, was that once the project is done, we don't have visibility to how much money's left in each and one of those projects. And it's not in any of our budgets. So it just kind of sits there as a slush fund, and I'll use that word again.
Councilman, we don't have slush
Well,
funds. Yeah,
let
we
me just
don't.
say, let me just, for
I would not
example,
use that word. We don't
for
have-
example,
No.
you know, we recently had a 2016 bond where we had leftover funding from a particular residential street project, and it sat there, and engineering took it to use on the Leopard Street project. Well, if I knew that funding was there, I would have asked for us to look at more residential streets. So from that perspective, I don't know where that there's money left over. So when you do something that's an up to spend amount, it's hard for us to see where that money's being sent. And there's a problem that we have with this particular type of way we're doing this. And I think this is the trend we're going to. Is that correct, City Manager? I mean, that's what we did recently with the 2020 bond project.
Say it again,
Engineering, I'm sorry, the 2020 engineering selections, right?
Right, the mass selection process?
Right.
Yes, sir.
So this is kind of the
Yeah.
same thing.
I don't know if it's the same, is it? I don't think it's the same, because those are defined, we had defined firms with defined
But it's a
projects.
spend up to amount.
Yeah.
That was an authorization to negotiate up to amount, essentially. And one thing that you got to realize about these contracts is that a lot of times there's no money tied to the contract. The money comes at the task order level. So we don't encumber this amount of money and have that money sit there just in case we have projects. So the appropriations come as the projects get approved, and those are usually subsequently approved by council. We have some of these contracts that we enter into that never wind up having a task order issued against them. But what we try to do in engineering, we use these contracts a lot, because if we've got to go out and procure an engineer with an RFQ process and all that, it might be 6 months before we get started. And a lot of times, that's not acceptable for my clients, which are the operating departments of the city. So we try to anticipate what sort of needs they have and have some of these MSA type of contracts on the shelf that we can use to execute work.
No, I understand the expediency of it, and that's not anything I'm complaining about. What I'm complaining about is not having that information. That's why I asked for all the information on the IDIQ program and the FMAC programs and making sure we have reports on it. But, and we just got them today.
Yeah, it's quarterly, they're right,
Right.
they're provided on time every quarter.
Correct. So, along with the change orders, but then we don't see contract amendments, on a regular basis. So there's a lot that is left to be desired in terms of understanding where funding is. Okay, and I understand where you may know where it's at, but as far as having that information useful to us is, I want to make sure I understand where all the dollars are being spent. And so when these things come up, it's got to be what kind of reporting that we have to the city on a regular basis. I asked for.
We do have Councilman, we have $1 billion budget, so
Right.
we have a
so-
full-time
Right.
finance department.
And
that,
I guess what I'm
you know,
going to say and
yeah.
suggest, and we can move on, is everyone is able to, I've done it a million times. I reach out, I go sit with Constance, and I say, hey, explain this, or where are we here? And I think, Councilman, you are the door is always open. That is for any leadership, every department. It is open for anyone to, again, in right form. You let your city manager know that you would like some more information, or where are we on this project? I mean, that's what we're here for. You can say, I'd like an annual, how is this going in terms of this 5-year agreement, this master service agreement? Where are we? How's it going? It's an update. So,
Well, Mayor, I appreciate that, and I've been asking for that for the last 2 years with
An
regards
update?
to the CIP,
an update.
with an update of where money is left over
I'm talking
or
about,
spent.
today we're not talking about CIP. Today we're talking about a specific MSA.
Well,
Master
this
Service
is,
Agreement.
this is in the CIP, right? Airport CIP?
Yeah, it's in our capital outlay plan,
Right.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm talking about the item today is it's specific to the airport. So those projects, you're saying you want an update on, that's all I'm saying, is that you could ask for
correct.
an update.
That's
Okay.
correct, and,
That's clear.
but it has just not been my experience of getting information forthcoming.
So when we bring projects associated with this agreement, we'll make sure and outline exactly how much is going to Garver and how much the project's going to cost. So you can kind of start to see that, because we don't have them allocated at this point.
Right.
Okay, so that being said, I think this is something that that I'll have to integrate with the departments in the development of their budget for next year. Would that be okay?
To do.
Yeah, that's fine, Councilman.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to approve item number 14.
Second.
Okay, do we have any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say no. The motion carries. Moving on, Section K, our legislative update. Do we have Tammy Embry on the phone?
Let's see,
Or-
Tammy, she was going to try to be, I'm not sure if she was in a committee meeting.
No, I'm here today.
Okay, great. Hi, Tammy.
Great.
Good, thank you. Tammy's in Austin, so Tammy, we're ready for your legislative update. Thank you.
Waiting on Austin.
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Manager. Just wanted to go over a few things quickly with y'all. It's a busy day up here. And I sent y'all an update last week that went over, that included a few bills that we filed comments on last week. Just a quick recap of those. We had a couple of bills that deal with zoning process and that would increase some the cumbersomeness of that process that is already a difficult process for a lot of our folks to work through. But we don't want to make that process any more complicated than it has to be. And so we filed some comments that we think will be helpful to those bills, and we'll work to see if we can get those bills improved or stopped in committee. We also had a couple of bills last week that were dealing with ETJ issues that would have actually allowed groups that are in the ETJ to call for an election that would have to be paid for by the city, that would have no input from city residents or anybody else to be released from the ETJ. And that would have multiple different effects, including potentially effects on our industrial district agreements. So we are working, and several other cities are working to try to get that improved. It also could affect our ability to protect our military installations. And there's been a lot of effort from some other military communities to work on protections for that in the bill. As most of you know, we have had issues in the ETJ in the past, including a proposed wind farm that would have been detrimental to our military installations. And so we want to make sure that we maintain all of the ability to regulate necessary functions in our ETJ and to protect our military installations. In addition, we also filed comments on a bill that would supersede, would create almost a new class of leave for firefighters and police officers, but and we recognize the sacrifices that our public safety personnel make for our community every day. And we filed comments on this bill because it would supersede both the workers' compensation program and preempt the leave policies that are already established and negotiated in our collective bargaining agreements. And that has a lot of legal implications in that bill that we'll be working on along with a collection of other cities. Two big bills passed the Senate last week. SB 10 would prevent cities from being able to hire state legislative consultants. Our consultants, Focus Advocacy, do a great job and are a great resource to us as we work through bills that are outside of our delegation, bills that are in committees that are being carried by members that we don't have a relationship with. And that I can absolutely 100% say it would be demonstrably more difficult to do my position without having Focused Advocacy as a resource to walk through this process every week. The other bill that passed the Senate last week is SB 23, which is Senator Huffman's bill that would seek to penalize local governments who defund their police departments. There has been some good improvements in that bill. That bill is still far from perfect. And we will continue to work through with her office and with the bill authors on the House side. It appears that it's going to coalesce. There's about 9 bills on that subject in the House, and it appears that that's going to coalesce around Representative Goldman's bills. But we are still working with TML and other cities behind the scenes to see if we can get some of the our concerns addressed with that, so that we recognize changes in collective bargaining agreements and other issues that our police and department and our legal department have identified as concerns in that bill. This week is a big week. We'll see several of you in town tomorrow for the Coastal Bend, the Chamber's Coastal Bend to Austin Day. They have a good agenda laid out for y'all at the Sheridan tomorrow. And at midday, you will actually hear from Kurt Seidlitz, who is one of our Focus Advocacy consultants. Kurt is a former member of the House, former chairman of House State Affairs. and a well-versed resource for the city, and we'll talk about some of the issues that we're working on and some issues that are important to our community tomorrow when he speaks to the group. Today, we have Councilmember Barrera in town to talk about, well, before I get to that, Bill, let me preview also, tomorrow we'll also have Chief Robert Rocha in town to testify on a bill regarding the Texas Fire Protection Commission. And the Metropolitan Police Chiefs have been working together to make improvements to that commission through the sunset process over the interim. And this is there is a compromise bill that has been achieved that will add some additional representation on that commission for the metropolitan fire departments. And so Chief Rocha will be up tomorrow to testify in support of that bill, along with some other metropolitan chiefs from across the state. And we're happy to have him in Austin carrying that message tomorrow. And today, Councilman Barrera is here to testify in House Transportation this afternoon on HB 4640 that's being carried by Representative Herrero, which you all know as the Port Economic Development Bill. In addition to Councilman Barrera, so we'll also have Mayor Scubro from Portland, Mayor Bajan from Port Aransas, and Mayor Parker from Ingleside, all also testifying in opposition to the bill. And we are picking up intelligence that there is significant state trade associations that are going to come out this afternoon and in opposition to the bill at the hearing. And we have also seen some recent local opposition, industry development, opposition develop against the bill. And I would actually like to introduce Wendy Herman from the Coastal Bend Home Builders to discuss the position that her group took on the bill.
It is good to be back here and see all of you face to face. I think I gave Al Raymond a heart attack when I walked through the door here. But I'm not here today to fuss at development services. I'm actually here to inform you guys of a position that my association has taken on HB 4640 and SB 2186. Yesterday, my board met, and after careful consideration and a lot of studying on this, elected to do a resolution of opposition on this because we feel it will be detrimental to housing. So I gave Rebecca a copy of our resolution and our letter, and so hopefully you guys have those. But I just want to go ahead and go over just a little bit about what we said. And I addressed this to the members of the South Texas delegation and committee members. The Coastal Bend Home Builders Association represents thousands in the home builder and land development industry. Members of our associations live and work in Nueces, San Patricio, Jim Wells, Aransas, Brooks, Duval, Kennedy, Live Oak, Bee, and Clayburgh counties. And I'm writing to let you know that we are in opposition of SB 2186 and HB 4640. Our resolution of opposition is attached to the letter. SB 2186 and HB 4640 pertain to the powers and duties allowed to the Port of Corpus Christi. It permits the port to develop, build upon, and improve property that is currently owned and that may be acquired by the Port of Corpus Christi or Nueces County in the corporate limits of the city of Robstown and the unincorporated areas of Nueces County. The problems that we see with the bill is that it allows the Port of Corpus Christi an unfair advantage to develop and build housing and direct competition with private industry. According to the budget posted on their website, the port has $60 million to spend for land acquisitions in 2021. And that would make the port the largest landowner and developer in South Texas. And by seeking to control lands that are not adjacent to their primary business, this is interfering with the free market and may drive up the cost of land and thereby make home ownership less affordable. It grants exceptions to building codes, fees, taxation, zoning laws that the private sector are not allowed. Because the port is exempt from building codes, development services, fees, property taxes, they would gain an unfair financial advantage over the private builders and developers who are not exempt. The exemption from zoning laws would allow the port or whomever they lease the land to place industrial businesses next to neighborhoods and schools. The bill clearly states on page 5, line 4 through 9, that the port may do what is in its own interest and not as what is in the best interest for the citizens of the community. These exemptions could be a detriment to the community and devastating to private businesses. And I've attached the resolution, like I said, that is on the back there. And as it stands now, we stand in opposition to this bill, and I just wanted to inform you guys of our position.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. Okey-doke.
And with that, Mayor, I would take any questions that the council might have about what's going on in Austin.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, no, I don't think so. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So with that, we will move on to section M, public hearings. Item number 19, second public hearing to discuss annexation of London Pirate Road. Mr. McGinn?
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Daniel McGinn, Director of the Planning Department. This next item is the second public hearing for the annexation of County Road 33, or what we call it now called London Pirate Road. Like last week, again, we don't have any action today. This is just to open the public hearing. And then on the 11th, we'll have the action of taking the ordinance will be on the 11th and the 18th for action. So today is really just public hearing is all.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to go through the PowerPoint again if you'd like, but it's the same as last week.
Right. Okay. I will, yes, Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor. I took the opportunity to take one of our assistant city managers and the parks director out to that road as part of a tour for District 5, even though it's technically in District 3. But it was something that is kind of important. So, but the condition of that road is, even though a part of it was expanded by the county, it's still really in poor shape. And considering that that's the entrance to their elementary school, I mean, we're going to have some aspect of improving that road at some point. I don't know if it's going to be able to handle all the traffic with once the houses get going up there, the trash vehicles, buses, you're going to have a lot more going through that road, and it is still, it's a county road, not in great condition. So if you can give it some information as to what our future plans are with that road. Thank you.
Richard's here, if you want to get a quick update. Richard, do you have one? Yes, sir, great, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, City Manager. Richard Martinez, Director of Public Works. So, Councilman, what we're proposing to do is go in and beef up that section there. So we're going to be adding another 6 inches of what we call millings to it and reclaiming it, and then coming back in and repaving it. Because the developer is only required to put 2 feet right now to the side of it. So with that issue happening, it's going to leave the same road in the same condition that it is today and adding 2 additional feet to the side. We felt that in the future, that wouldn't be the best interest for the city, because we would capture that roadway with only 2 feet on the side, which will slough off. So we said, how can we beef that up, take in dollars from that developer to be able to pay for the paving materials? So all the work that we're going to be doing would be in kind. So the city would be putting in kind work. The materials will be paid for by that developer so that we can beef it up. Yes, it'll still be a rural way section, but once it's a city road and more development happen along that whole roadway, they'll have to expand that to a city roadway, to those specifications when we have that development happen.
And this is a C2 collector? What is it?
I'm not sure if that's a C2. C3. He's saying it's
C3. C3. Okay. Like I said, I think at some point we'll have to add that to the CIP and bond package, because there's just I can't see that being a road that it's going to be able to maintain that weight and of the traffic once the traffic starts kicking up.
So even the section that the county built is already showing wear, and we're looking at trying to how we can beef that up as well.
Okay. So thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Mayor, can I add something before Mr. Martinez
Absolutely.
walks away? Mr. Martinez, the other thing that I might want to add is if we should most likely take a trip out there, around 8 o'clock when school starts. There's a lot of staging to drop off kids at school. and it's not adequate space at all. I'm sure my colleague from District 5 will recognize that. I think I see his face nodding. So, yeah, it's definitely not very safe at where it's at. And although the improvements you brought up, I think are much appreciated. Yeah, the street's not wide enough, particularly where the school is. And something's going to have to be worked out eventually. It's already a difficult situation that time and after school.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged, sir.
All right, that's all I have, Mayor.
Great, thank you, Mr. Bonetta. Okay, I will open the public hearing on item 19.
Okay, and there were no comments received,
No
Mayor.
comments, okay. Okay, great. And so there's no comments. We'll close the public hearing, and there is no action on this item. Thank you, Mr. McGinn. Item N, individual consideration items. Items 20 and 22. So item number 20, resolution authorizing a 6-year service agreement with N4 US Inc. for N4 license subscriptions and for prorated N4 licenses. It's a resolution, yes, authorizing that. Okay, and do we have a staff presentation? I think that is 20.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Sure. Is there a staff presentation?
If you want one, do you want a staff presentation?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I saw it.
Well,
People coming
it's an individual consideration item.
Right. I think do we need a staff, does anyone have any questions or prefer, no, I think we're okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd make a motion, we approve.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The motion passes. Item number 21 is a motion awarding a construction contract to JE Construction Services, Corpus Christi, Texas, for the residential street rebuild program. Rebid base bid A for 15 streets located in council districts 1, 3, and 4. Mr. Edmonds.
Good afternoon, Jeff Edmonds, Director of Engineering Services. The reason we put this under individual consideration items is because there's kind of a long story associated with this one, and this is really our third bite at the apple to try and get a full slate of contractors. This program was originally conceived to have 5 construction contracts, and we first bid opening was in April 2020, and 2 of the parts we didn't receive bids on, and we wound up constructing a part and awarding that to JE. Some of you that were here remember that we had awarded the airline road contract, and then we decided to postpone that construction until early this year, and we didn't want to harm the contractor with that decision, and we came up with the idea, since they had bid on this program, and their bid was just a tiny fraction, 0.02% above Haas Anderson's bid. We used their bid pricing and awarded them a contract on that. The second bite at the apple, if you will, we had 2 parts that were advertised, and JE submitted a low bid on both of those. That was, bids were opened in August of 2020. The situation at that time was that JE had picked up another contract. This was a Sunnybrook sidewalk project, and that RSRP that we had awarded to them, and they were at that point not executing very well on those projects, and they had airline getting ready to start up, and staff had real concern about their capacity and ability to execute that work. We declared them non-responsive on one of those parts and awarded that part to the second low bidder. The gap was too much on the second part, and staff felt like we needed to re-advertise. Now, that's the part that's up for award right now. And once again, JE Construction submitted a low bid. Now, these 6 months in between have made a big difference in how we were assessing their performance. They've completed that Sunnybrook project. They are executing sufficiently well on the RSRP and the airline project. So I would say that at this point, staff feels like there's no reason to declare them a non-responsive bidder, and we're recommending that we award this contract to JE Construction.
Okay. Okay, do we have any questions, council members? I will entertain a motion then to approve item number 21.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The motion carries. Item number 22, resolution authorizing park improvement agreement for Rancho Vista subdivision to develop and gift 1.268 acres of parkland to the city and authorize an agreement to allow for the Owners Association to maintain the new parks.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Sarah Munoz, Interim Director of Parks and Recreation. Next slide, please. This resolution accomplishes three main items. It formalizes an agreement with the developers of Rancho Vista to dedicate land and build parks in lieu of community enrichment and park development fees. It also allows the HOA to maintain the parks, and it provides for reimbursement to the developer for parks that have been constructed. So the next couple of slides, we're going to go through what the park looks like now, just in case anyone hasn't had a chance to visit. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, this area has a playground, seating area, and a bike rack. Next slide, please. It also has a covered seating area next to this pond. Next slide, please. Here's a picture of the walking trail. They have some really nice dog stations, some bulb outs for parking, so all can access this park. Next slide, please. And here are some more seating areas along the route and some trash cans. In summary, staff recommends approval of this agreement. I stand by for any questions. I'd also like to point out the developers here with us today.
Yes.
Oh,
There he is.
on this side,
Right.
if you have any specific questions about the development.
Hello. Mr. Hernandez, do you have a question, or is that, no, you do? Okay, Councilman Hernandez.
Okay, this was part of our tour on Friday, along with yourself and Mr. Young. And I also had a conversation with Mr. Brazelton about this via text. So I want to just kind of, as well as Al Raymond on this, this is kind of one of those things I just want to make sure is clear. The trail, the park that we're talking about is fine, where they have the playground equipment, no issues there. But the part where we're talking about with the walking trail is, I recall this was something that was done in lieu of, or as a conjunction of, with the fact that there's no other sidewalks on either side of that median, or there's no streets. So I don't necessarily have a problem with how this is done, because it's done really nicely. It's a nice walking trail, has like kind of meandering kind of construction to it, has, you know, the dog little baggies things, some seating areas, and the parking, which is something we discussed for city parks, to have something like that in any development of city parks or any bond projects in the future. The question is that I want to make sure that we understand that if we're going to give up the two sidewalks on either side and have something like this in the future, that we have some sort of policy in place so we don't kind of have that appearance of double dipping, so to speak, right? You get the credit for putting everything in the middle, but then you get another credit for the community enrichment funds. So if we can have something along those lines, so understand that in the future, if we're going to do something like that, that it's something like what Mr. Brazelton has done with how he's designed that, or have some sort of policy so we're not doesn't have the appearance of double dipping.
Al, would you like to add? Okay. I see a thumbs up from Development Services for that, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, great. Okay, do we have any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say no. The motion passes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you,
Thank
Council.
you. Section O, first reading ordinances, items 23 through 26. Item number
20 through 22, Mayor.
I'm sorry?
It's items 20 through 22. Oh, I'm so sorry, Mayor. You're right. 23 through 20.
Yeah, that's okay. 20, I was like.
Yeah, I
Thank
looked
you, Michael.
across real quick. Okay.
Okay,
What
23
can I
through
say?
26. So item number 23.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve item number 23.
Item number 23. Okay. Item number 23. Okay. So item number, hang on, just so we know what, the public knows what it is. So item number 23 is a ordinance accepting $22,816.97 from the state of Texas Law Enforcement Officer Standards and Education Account and appropriating those monies in the Police Grants Fund for training of sworn and civilian personnel. So we have a motion, and we have a second? Correct, great. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Item number 24, ordinance rejecting the apparent low bid of WLE LLC due to refusal to perform on a previous mowing contract providing similar services and authorizing a 3-year service agreement with Juan Antonio Galnades, DBA Tony's Lawn Service of Rockport, Texas, for mowing and grounds maintenance of Stormwater Mowing Group 5B. Do we have a staff presentation or? Okay, motion to approve. Do we have a second? Okay, any discussion? Okay, great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The motion carries. Item number 25 is an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 49, to promote better management of the public rights of way for bond and other infrastructure projects, to clarify responsibilities for all types of utilities within a public right-of-way. Mr. Edmonds.
Thank you, Mayor. Council members, Jeff Edmonds, Director of Engineering Services, explaining our ordinance. So a little background. Utilities have a statutory right-of-way, a statutory right to occupy the right-of-way. I'm sorry. And although they have a right, their right is subordinate to the rights of the traveling public to use as a motorway. There are many third-party utilities that occupy the rights of way in addition to our typical city-owned utilities, the water, wastewater, and gas. Now, our infrastructure projects require us to coordinate with all of those utilities that are occupying the right-of-way. The problem is that the current ordinance is out of date, and it also requires some clarification to help address some problems we've experienced in project execution, and help us to get better coordination out of franchise utility operators. So this is an artist rendition of what a roadway cross-section looks like. I'm the artist, so it's not real good, but we're used to focusing on the surface improvements, and when we do a bond program, what you're thinking about is we want to have new sidewalks, curb and gutter, good smooth pavement, ride quality. But there's a lot underneath the surface of the roadway that you don't see, and that's what I'm trying to illustrate with this cross-section. You've got duct banks that carry conduit. You've got conduits and duct banks for underground power. You've got the water, the wastewater. Storm drainage is probably the largest piece of that infrastructure. You've got poles that have overhead utilities. And even with the complexity shown in this cross-section, there's a lot of complexity that you don't see because we're not illustrating the laterals that come from these utilities to serve the adjoining homes and businesses. These are some photos from some recent construction projects that illustrate some of the problems that we encounter. That first photo is one of our inspectors standing next to a utility pole that is in the alignment of the roadway that has to be relocated before we can complete the roadway. The guys in the trenches are working on communication duct bank. The bottom left, that's another utility pole that, as you can see, it's in conflict with the location of the curb and gutter. So we make a significant attempt to coordinate with these private utility companies. We distribute plans and specifications to them at every step of the design development process. We host quarterly coordination meetings to review upcoming projects and hear any issues that they have. We also spend significant amounts of money to do what's called subsurface utility engineering, where we try to get accurate XYZ locations on all of their utilities in the right-of-way and attempt to deconflict it at the design phase. Now, our current ordinance also does require them to review and stay current on our capital improvement program. I'd say some of their efforts leave a little bit to be desired in that regard. So these are the problems that we have experienced in recent years. So sometimes we're sending this communication to somebody with the utility company, and they come up when we're getting ready to start construction or when we're digging into their utility, and they say, oh, well, you've been sending all that stuff to the wrong person. Well, I think it's their responsibility to maintain point of contact with us. But anyway, we've heard that a lot. We have these design review meetings where they don't show up, which is fine. It's not mandatory, but if you're not engaging in the process, I'm kind of expecting not to have problems downstream. Sometimes we turn in these locate tickets. We do it usually during the design phase, and we do it during the construction. And that's the 811 call, and that signals utilities that there's something going to happen in a certain geographical area, and they have a responsibility to go out there and mark their facilities. That doesn't always occur. Now, if you don't identify them during the design phase, it increases the likelihood that you're going to have a conflict in the design that manifests itself during construction. Utility relocation projects are not always programmed to coincide with our project schedule. We've heard utilities say, oh, that's not in our budget. We'll have to get to this next quarter or next fiscal year. Sometimes we have these situations like some of the ones I illustrated where it is absolutely on the critical path of construction and we're having to wait on them. And then sometimes, weeks or months goes by before we can get things removed from poles or duct banks moved so that we can complete our construction. Now, these project delays during construction result in significant impacts to the schedule, and particularly if it happens during construction, there's cost escalation. So these are the problems that I brought to Janet, who is the attorney that staffs engineering with all of our legal needs. And I'm going to turn it over to Janet and let you explain the changes that she's been working on to the ordinance to help address some of these problems.
Great.
Janet Whitehead, Assistant City Attorney. As Jeff said, the purpose of the ordinance is to address some of these issues that we're seeing during construction and design of our right-of-way projects. The ordinance requires the utility owners, the facility owners, to keep their contact information current with the city and to submit a schedule. So what it does is it amends section 49-43 of our existing code, where it requires the owners to relocate in a timely manner and to submit a schedule to us. What the new Article 8 does is it puts timelines so that it sets the expectations of the facility owners and the city, what the responsibilities of each party is going to be. During the design phase, We do notify in 30, 60, and 90% intervals the facility owners of the design submissions, the specs that we get and the plans, the drawings that we get from our design engineer. We immediately send those to the facility owners during design, so they can identify conflicts and they can let us know. If during the design process a conflict is discovered that cannot be designed around or that we have not been requested to design around, we send notice to the facility owner. They have 45 days at that point to submit a schedule to us, and then 120 days to relocate their facility. If after award of the construction contract, the conflict is discovered, they have 5 days to submit a relocation schedule and 30 days to complete relocation. The ordinance, the current ordinance, section 49-43, already has the penalty in there that's covered in 1-6 of our city code for penalties for unlawful behavior. What we did in this ordinance was we consolidated it all into section 49-111 to make it easier to prosecute and to put the facility owners on notice so they don't have to go looking throughout the code and to Texas Penal Code to find the penalties. It's all right here in one section of the ordinance. And I believe that covers the cost. So under, remember the facility owners are in our right-of-way by permit, either through state law or through our permitting process. And they're there by permission, they relocate at their own expense. If it's an electric utility like AEP, then the state law requires AEP or the electrical utility to relocate at its own expense to permit the widening or straightening of the right-of-way. Otherwise, the city pays the cost for that. And if it's a utility that's in the right-of-way or, well, in a location by property, then that's a different set of circumstances. So like if we acquire property and there's a utility already there, they have a property right before the city, we pay for the relocation. And we did have a meeting with the facility, the private utilities, to present this back in December. The only comments that we got was from AEP. We did make changes to the ordinance and sent everyone a final revision in March, and we have received no further comments on the ordinance changes. So that's it.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions? Councilman Hernandez.
Yes, real quick, on, just so I understand clearly, on the actual notification, you have 45 days for the design portion of it, and then an additional 30 days if needed?
No.
Or is that just on the actual relocation?
No, 45 days is for them to submit a schedule to us
Okay.
showing when they're going to relocate within the 120 days. So, and the relocation, the actual relocation, most of it is usually started when we issue the NTP to the construction contractor. That's when we're digging up the road. That's when they're out there usually relocating their facility. But they can do it before we start construction.
Okay, so they could actually be longer, depending on when we notify them.
No, if it's during design, they will submit a schedule within 45 days that shows a 120-day relocation schedule.
Oh, I see, okay.
So, and if for good cause, there are some good cause in here. One of them, like the extreme weather we had in February, that would be a cause to delay the relocation. Some of it is the availability of materials required for relocation, the impact to the users. So, if it's an AT&T duct bank, or one of the issues is, let's say AT&T duct bank that serves the hospital, and they need additional time to create a new duct bank before they move the old one to transfer service over. That could be a cause for delay. So, but they have to communicate that to us. One of the problems is they're not communicating to the city, and that's why this ordinance sets the expectation. So both sides know what the communication pathway is.
Okay, other than AEP, who else would be affected here?
AT&T, Spectrum, Charter, Grande, and there's some other telecommunication companies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Hunter?
Great job on this. For some of the council members that haven't been here, other in my immediate vicinity, I think Paulette and I or the mayor and I were the two here when we were going through some serious issues, especially on the third-party situation. I just want to commend you all on this. I think this is very important. This is very strongly needed. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Mayor. Motion to approve.
Second.
Great. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The motion carries. Item number 26, ordinance amending the Corpus Christi Code of Ordinances to continue using the 2020 winter quarter average calculated from December 2019 to February 2020 for wastewater charges from May of 2021 through April of 2022. Do we have a staff presentation, or
On this one,
do we need that? We may need that. We're going to basically use, Peter,
yeah.
I mean, if you can explain that, I think
Sure,
we're
I
all
can,
for
yeah.
that.
So, right, this is because of that extreme weather event where persons had water breaks at their home or
Right.
commercial businesses, their water averaging is off then, for the 3 months to do the winter quarter averaging. So we recommended to the council and the community that we use last year's 3 months of winter quarter averaging. And this action is required by city council just to have that in our rate model.
Right.
It's really that simple.
And this is going to be very helpful to our
It'll be extremely
residents.
helpful to the community. We've
Wonderful.
received a lot of positive feedback from the community for doing this.
Great. I will entertain a motion then to approve item number 26.
So move.
Great. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The motion carries. Let's see, should we do it? Yeah, let's do it. Item number 27. Okay, update on amended City Council Policy 28, award guidelines for arterial and collector streets with concrete or asphalt pavement. Mr. Martinez.
Afternoon, Mayor, Council, City Manager. Richard Martinez, Director of Public Works. So this is an update to a amended policy that this board approved last year in October. And so there were some questions early on about some projects and how we go about them. And so I committed to come back here and update you on the policy. And as far as the policy, I am required to come back to you before the end of this calendar year to come back with another recommendation of whether or not this policy is working or we need to make some adjustments to it as well. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about how it was established. So some of how we got to where we are today. So 2017, our engineering department went through and did a life cycle analysis internally in-house and came up with a cost of $100 a lane mile to selection of concrete versus asphalt on collector and arterials, to even include local streets as well. And that $100, they did a very good job of coming up with that based on the applications that they did at that time. So then in 2019, council directed a policy to go through, and that policy was approved, and that analysis was done by Freese and Nichols, and it came up with a policy of $125,000 as you go through a lane mile. So the difference between that. So an example of, if you have a arterial roadway and you bid them out both ways, if there's a difference within $125,000, then you can select concrete if you'd like. You can also go asphalt if you'd like. This council can make that determination. But we wanted to set some stipulations there. Next slide. So after that, we were required to come back on an annual basis. So as I came here in the city of Corpus Christi, we started a process and we went through that whole process as well. In that process, there was an amendment to that, and I'll go over those in a minute. But basically what it comes down to, there's a couple of additive stipulations. So anything with a plasticity index or soils with plasticity index of over a 30, it should not go concrete. Under a 30, then you can consider it as well. And then we looked at the price as well. It was still it was $128,000, but we decided to recommend to you to stay at $125,000 to keep that conformity through the policy. Next slide, please. So the analysis was performed by Roadway Asset Services, and they've been doing this for more than 30 years. And on the WebEx today, we have Scott Gordon, who's their principal engineer, who's here if you have any questions as well on how they did the analysis and go through. But they've done 4 of the 5 major cities in the pavement analysis in Texas. And so their background is pavements. And so when I looked at that, I said, this is what we need to do and take a look at it, whole new look at it. Well, it's interesting. So Friesen Nichols was very, very close when they came back and get the 128. So when we looked at the policy with roadway analysis, when they came back through, they said they're missing one thing, and that's the plasticity of your soils in Corpus Christi. You can build a roadway on top of, plastic soils. You put a concrete street, and you'll start to see it pop. And one of the streets that's it's a good example of that, although it's been on the ground for more than 30 years, is Waldron Road. Mm-hmm. You can go and take a look at that. A lot of that has been because deferred maintenance in those areas as well. Mm-hmm. So they went back through and they did a life cycle analysis, life cycle cost analysis, but they added a couple different things. They applied a discount rate and they applied inflation rates that were involved in that. And when you do pavement management systems, you have to involve all those. So when you're looking down the road, that price is valid as you're going through this analysis. And then we also looked at a 40-year analysis. The last analysis was done on 30 years. Well, that didn't give concrete credit for the last 10 years. So what we did a 40-year analysis, because that's what concrete's lifespan is if you maintain it properly. We did that, and you'll see the charts in a minute and how that works out with asphalt and concrete as well. So basically, they came up with 4 key factors. So the first one, again, was the plasticity index, looking at that and saying if the subgrade is greater than 30, asphalt should prevail. Because what happens is asphalt can move with some of those areas if you do your pavement design. Now remember, you can't do a pavement design for asphalt. It's not going to be the same as concrete. It's not going to be the same thickness. If you go with asphalt, it's not that it's inferior. That pavement design will be thicker. If you go with concrete, it may be less of a thickness, but it's as strong in that same design. And what you want to look at what the conditions are up underneath in the subgrade. So the second thing they came up with was cost analysis. When they went through, they did that review. It was $128,000. We thought it was close enough to $125,000 to keep that continuity between the 2 policies and not change that as you go through, because of the number 4, and I'll get to that in a second. So number 3, we also excluded residential streets. When we did the analysis, there was not a cost-benefit analysis for residential streets to be concrete because of their traffic load. So we looked at, yes, we would love to have the concrete, but does it make sense? Are we spending the money properly? Or can we build other roadways with that dollar amount savings as you go through that? So in the last 4th one is, if the adjacent pavement section is concrete, additional consideration should be given in the uniform surface. And you'll see in a minute at the very end how that has played out in this policy as we go forward. Next slide, please. So here's a slide on the non-expansive soils. So if you take a look at that, on the left on the graph, you'll see there is a pavement condition rating of 0 to 100. So on that scale to the left, 0 to 100, 0 being the worst street, 100 being a brand new street. And you'll see the blue line that comes across. That's a deterioration curve. That is a deterioration curve for any street that you build. You build in a pavement deterioration curve, and you see that the concrete street, it ends at 40 years of life cycle on the bottom right. It should last 40 years. On the top where you see the squiggly lines going up and down, that's actually the maintenance techniques that you should be doing in those areas that extend the life to get you to 40 years, or what I call short-circuiting. If you do the right applications, you can get a street that goes over 100 years, which I've had in the past, can go over 100 years and not having to recapitalize again. But when we looked at both asphalt and concrete in non-expansive soils, the difference was $128,000. That's the difference that you come up with your life cycle cost analysis. And that's the reason why we gave you the $125 to look at as a benefit analysis when you're picking concrete versus asphalt. Now, this is non-expansive soils. Now, let's move over and go to expansive soils. The next slide, please. So with that, again, soil characteristics, I'll tell a little bit about this. When you're doing repairs on non-expansive soils, it's less type of repairs. And so you're looking at cracks and joint sealings, and so the time that it takes for you to do those is less. It's not that much issues with our public when we're doing these type of maintenance techniques. And then when you're looking at pavement failures, you're usually looking at mill and overlays for asphalt streets when we're looking at these. Next slide. So expansive soils, this is an important one here. So if you take a look at that, again, now you see the life cycle changed. On the bottom, on the left chart, you'll see that now the life cycle for concrete went to 35 years instead of 40. And then asphalt went in the 25 versus 30 that it had before, because more wear and tear because your soils are moving. Application rates are the same as you come through. You may have to do some heavier, they added, like in concrete, we added more concrete panel replacements and that type of thing because it's moving more if you actually do that in expansive soils. But the difference was only $18,000 between the two on expansive soils. So again, taking a look at that for your life cycle benefit analysis, they're about a wash on heavy clays. They're about a wash if they're designed properly. Next slide. So there's an example of Waldron Road right there. That's in the bond. You approved that in the 2020 bond to repair, and there's panels that need to be replaced through that entire section there. So again, in high clay soils, what happens is you get a street, and you've got a concrete street. For 10 or 15 years, it looks really nice, but there's things that are happening underneath that street that you cannot see. There's washout of soils up underneath it, and the next heavy truck comes through, it knocks it down just like that. So for years, you may have thought you had a great street, but it's just waiting. It's a time bomb waiting for something to go over the top and go if you don't maintain those streets properly. And I want to tell you, and I want to thank you for providing funding in last year's budget for us of $1 million to do proper maintenance on concrete roadways. Because without that, these streets would be in this same condition.
Can I ask you, Richard,
Sure.
is that, it was 5 million?
It was $1 million.
Oh, it was 1 million?
1 million. Because we have 15 miles today, 15 lane miles today.
So is that sufficient?
So at this point, yes. So we're able to get more than half of them on this year's budget to go on out for bid. So they're finishing the design. They're about to go out for bid. And you'll see more, like even on the new roadways. So you can go through on Staples and already start to see some spalling, minor spalling. Well, we got to take care of that spalling now. Otherwise, that becomes a panel replacement.
Right.
And we have to also look at, contractors to make sure that we're going back and catching warranty, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And all that needs to be happening. Inspections needs to happen in that. And so when we put that out, we're only doing, not only are we doing visual inspections, but they're coming through and doing forensic inspections. Take a look. They're drilled down in underneath the concrete to see, is it hollow? And what do we need to be doing underneath there? Pump it back up again. And there's ways of doing that. Mud jacking. You can put in polyurethane back in. You can actually pump it in. And so you just got to keep a really good watch of that. So again, that $1 million is going to go a long ways to protect the streets that we have today. Okay. Plus the bonds handling Waldron, and any streets that go forward, we'll look into see how our budget works as new streets are being added onto the program for concrete.
Okay.
But in this case, again, it's more invasive, more intrusive. So longer time than when you pull a panel out and putting it back in. Versus a mill and overlay, which is 1 or 2 days. So you got to look at those maintenance issues as well. Concrete's great if you put it in the right spot. Next slide, please. So here's a map of the soils. And so the soils in the light peach is what you have to watch out for. And if you look at the majority of everything that's not on the island and that's not on Flower Bluff is high clay soils and PI soils, high PI soils. So we have to make sure that when we're doing the geotech, on our projects, our capital projects, that's being evaluated as you go through, because we don't want to put, again, something down in an application that is not going to last for or return on for investment of our citizens and dollars. Next slide. So key additional items. So on residential streets, why did we go against, why did we say no? So it's not financially beneficial on the recapitalization cost when you're looking at concrete versus asphalt based on traffic loads, the loads in the area. And then higher costs when you come with utility cuts. So most of the utility cuts are in residential areas. Our utilities are under our roads. So in some cities that have a predominantly 100% amount of concrete, those utilities are moved to the parkway so that you don't have that disruption in your roadway. but all our streets, all our utilities are in the middle. So for instance, if it comes back through, they're gonna have to cut back in. If there's a new house being built, they gotta cut back in. And when you cut a panel, you weaken a panel if you don't put that properly back in place. So we feel, again, asphalt should continue to go forward in residential areas. And then the last recommendation was pavement continuity. So for us, is if you build a section of roadway like we just did with Staples, and then you go back to asphalt again, it just didn't make sense. And I'll talk a little bit about that just in a second when we tell you about how the bids went. But for us, that's an idea that you can look at, even if it's over the 125, as long as it's within a certain range, that it makes sense to continue with concrete if you've already built one with concrete. Next slide, please. So the final recommendations were, again, geotechnical conditions are important. Plasticity indexes greater than 30 should not consider concrete. The cost differential was important, so we stayed, and our recommendation to you all as a board was to, as a council, was to stay at 125, because 128, you could still consider a little more if you wanted to do that continuity or some other factor. So 125 was just a baseline, but you still had some opportunities to consider that. And then residential streets were not recommended, and then again, pavement continuity was that recommendation. Next slide. So I want to tell you a little bit about how has that been working over the last 6 months. It's probably what you want to know. So there have been 10 contracts that have come up before you, and 2 of them made sense to look at those in both directions. So one of them was Staples Street from Baldwin to Castores, okay? That, when it came up, it was bid both ways, and when that was bid, it was a little higher than 125. It was in the 130 range. But because of the continuity of that first large section that was built with concrete, our recommendations to you as council was to continue the next phase with concrete. And that was the way that it was approved here with this council. So that moved forward. Again, utilizing this policy. The next one was just recently, and that was the Leopard Street and Oasis Bay to Palm that came forward out of those 10. Again, an arterial and collector only, and took a look at that, and the way the bids worked out, it was $155, which was kind of put it outside that realm for concrete versus asphalt, and so we recommended not to go that way because it was outside the dollar realm. It was over. It wasn't even close. It was quite a bit more. So those 2 were the major ones that went. There were other ones that were arterial collectors, but there were like 6 points, intersections, which were smaller pieces and that type of thing. And then you pass the 2020 bond streets to go forward to get design. All those are going to come back individually to you on those arterials and collectors. So although that package was approved to get out engineered, you will see each one of those arterials collectors come to you, and they will be bid the same way, and you'll have that opportunity to give your input on which way you'd like to recommend those when that comes up. So with that, that's a short, quick update for now, and so for some of the members that weren't here when we first approved that policy. And again, I'll be coming within the next 6 months with another update with a recommendation to either continue the policy or make some changes to the policy.
Thank you, Richard. So does I don't think I saw anything on the maintenance of both. How does that fit into, the 125,000 that we're,
Okay.
I know that's a guideline, but how does that fit into that number?
Okay. So if we go back to the PowerPoint, and I'll show you where it was at.
Okay.
So let's back up to the first slide of non-invasive. It's the keep backing up, back up. Right there. Let's go back there. There's expansive soils there. Okay, so you see that squiggly line, those squiggly lines on top? Okay, so you see on the left-hand side that's listed on the bottom left, you'll see that it looks like applications. You'll see kind of in words right on the left-hand side there. Yeah, it's kind of hard to read, but it says original, then it says a seal coat, panel replacement. Those are the applications right there. The cost you see at the bottom of that slide is associated with all those maintenance activities for that. And the same thing for asphalt on the right. on the right slide, you'll see those are all the applications listed underneath that'll happen during the maintenance, and the cost is listed below.
Right.
That is the life cycle cost analysis. So that takes in all the proper maintenance that should be happening on those roadways for both asphalt, the type of maintenance, and both concrete, and then what it is.
Okay, okay. Councilman Martinez?
Yeah, I guess my question is, how old did you say the Waldron Road?
It's over 30 years. It's over 30 years old.
So I guess my question is it's hard to consider looking at this is what happens with concrete and the, when you have this plasticity index, when you're looking at a poorly maintained road 30 years later, would asphalt be much better? I mean, it seems like asphalt might even be worse 30 years with improper maintenance.
So I'm going to make this statement, sir, because I'm going to own it. Okay, so I'm gonna make this statement. Our asphalt streets have not been maintained the way they should have been. So even if it was asphalt, it would not have been maintained.
Right.
You're gonna own it, Richard.
I own it. I mean, I'm here. This is what my job is.
And what would a
Love it.
30-year-old unmaintained asphalt road look like? Well, I mean, because that's what we're comparing it to. We're looking at this concrete in Flower Bluff saying, look what happens when you use concrete in an area that isn't ideal for it. But, I mean, wouldn't an asphalt road be in at least as bad or worse condition? I guess that's what I'm trying to compare it to when considering the different types.
And it would be, but because it was an arterial, the city probably would have prioritized that. The only reason why the concrete wasn't prioritized because it was so expensive. In other words, an overlay on Waldron would have been much easier than the panel replacement that was $4 million at that time. And so I believe that, again, I'm talking for somebody that is no longer here,
Right.
and 30 years of deferred maintenance, but the can was kicked down the road on Waldron, which should have been much sooner. We should have
Right.
been doing panel replacements, joint sealing, those type of things. And those have been implemented today. Those types of activities have been implemented today.
With those monies?
Yes, with those
That's
monies.
budget, yeah,
Yes.
okay. Okay. Councilman Pusley?
Yeah, to go along with Councilman Martinez, it's a 30-year-old road, and the construction methods used 30 years ago may not be near what our specifications would be today. So we don't have any idea how they did the base or how, structurally well-defined it was. But so that's a very good point. But Richard, I want to go back and starting with slide number 5 on your non-expansive soils. I want to make sure I understand this. So your chart here indicates where it shows your decline curve. Your blue line is your decline curve in years of length of how well they will last. And so in both of these slides, both for the expansive clays and the non-expansive soils, you have asphalt lasting longer than concrete. Am I understanding that correctly?
No. If you look at the non-expansive, you see that on the bottom. So the bottom is years. So on the side is pavement condition. So if you see that blue line ending on the bottom right, it's almost 40 years for concrete. And then for asphalt, you'll see it's almost 30 years as it gets down to the bottom. Can you see that on the slide, sir?
Well,
If I had a,
my slides are absolutely reversed on the presentation I have.
okay, the ones that I have up on top, it may have been
Now,
loaded.
yeah, yours make sense. I kept looking at mine because, and I'm not kidding you, mine show exactly the opposite of what you have on your presentation. I don't know how that happened, because I've hit the refresh button at least 10 times on this presentation. Okay, well, that makes sense. What you have here is correct. I would fully expect that the decline curve on concrete would be a lot
Yes.
longer than
You're correct.
asphalt.
You're correct. And so I'll check and see how that got loaded. But that's what you see up there is the presentation, sir.
Okay. Can we go to the expansive one now? I want to
Sure.
make sure that,
Yeah, so expansive, remember what I said, it actually lowered a bit because when you do expansive soils, you have a different deterioration curve. So the concrete is now 35 versus 40 years.
Yeah.
And then the asphalt is 25 versus 30 years.
yeah. So I kept looking at, I know you and I met about this, but,
You're right.
and I kept looking at these and I kept thinking, this can't be right. I don't understand how
Yeah,
you
you're
could-
correct. My apologies if you guys received something that's not my presentation here
Is
today.
mine the only one showing that way, or?
No, you're correct. I think they flipped the graphs.
Okay. New one, okay. Okay, that's all I had. I just wanted to make sure I was on the right page. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Hunter.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Martinez, if you could pull up that slide that we were just looking at on non-expansive or expansive, either one, doesn't matter. The price differential of the 128,000 or the 18,000, does that take into consideration the extra 10 years of life that it would take to build an asphalt street?
Asphalt does
Second Street,
no, it does not.
or reconstructed?
No, it does not, because this says that it can make it to the 40 years if you do proper maintenance.
Okay, so if, probably won't have an answer, but just a quick question. What would the price differential be for a 40-year concrete street versus, what was it, 30-year asphalt street plus reconstruction of the street and 10 years of maintenance?
Oh, it would be quite a bit. I'd have to give
So
you some
wouldn't that
some
be
dollars.
what we should be measuring in our difference? That's what I'm,
That's a way we could look at it, yes, but if you want to take apples and apples, this is what, if you could make it and do the maintenance, if I came through and said, I'm going to let it deteriorate in 35 years and then rebuild it again and recapitalize it again, we've already said that asphalt would not, that you're answering the question saying asphalt wouldn't not be considered in there because you'd have to recapitalize the road, which would almost double that cost.
so, but according to your numbers here, you're let's just say we're doing $1 million street versus $128,000 concrete street, right? So for 1 lane mile, just theoretically. If we were to build another asphalt street, because you'd have to reconstruct it after its 30-year life, we would be, I guess what I'm looking for is that differential. I would be, as a taxpayer, strongly considering how much more it would cost us to have 1.5 streets versus 1 concrete street. Do you follow me, or
Well,
am I sounding alien to everyone?
I think I do, Councilman, but then again, the life cycle cost, because we feel that we're maintaining the street. If you don't maintain it, I think your point is completely valid as what was happening prior to that. But since we're maintaining it, we're going to be putting it out so that it matches what a 40-year street in concrete would be.
That's what I'm asking. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Sorry, I didn't understand that earlier. Thank you.
Mr. Lerma.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Lerma, sorry.
Richard, you and I have talked about the street maintenance when we toured District 1.
Yes, sir.
And we talked about base on asphalt, okay? And you and I discussed that if we increase the base, that would give you a longevity of the asphalt. At any point, are we going to be doing that? Do we need to change our policy? Right now, we have a minimum standard of a base when a street goes in. And you and I discussed that there's different standards of base, you know, minimal standards, you got the medium or the high end. And I know that's a cost increase.
Right.
You know, but to the city and the citizens, is it worth going up to that next level and increasing the base? And if we do that, is that going to give our asphalt streets an extra 10, 15 years? You know, it makes sense to spend the money now, and our streets last a lot longer, especially if you're going to maintain them the proper way. You know, but at this point, we have a policy that just says minimum standards. Right. You know, what is it that you need from us to be able to increase those 10 to 15 years on our street maintenance?
So you bring up a very good point, Councilman. So The standards have been increased from years past. There was a time here that streets were allowed to be built with, let's just say, pit run or caliche, and which doesn't have the structural strength that you have with base material, with a crushed limestone or that type of thing. And as soon as that gets wet, of course, it deteriorates. We've found streets that we've built in years past that we've dug up for maintenance, and it has 2 inches of base in them. That's not even close to being enough. So pavement designs are important. And so those pavement designs have been beefed up to this point, but they still need to go further. And that's one thing that I've been working with our engineering group that we are looking at now, to look at our pavement designs to see where we need to go with them in the future. And you're exactly correct. So if you put in 6 inches of base with 2 inches of hot mix, which is about kind of what our spec is today, and we increase that to 8-inch with 2.5 inches of hot mix, or in arterials, it's 3 to 4 inches of hot mix, you're going to get a much longer life. And so we're looking at that for the future to bring back to this council for review once we review our pavement designs again.
Richard, can I add to that, Councilman Lerma? Yeah, so we definitely going to be bringing this is a policy item. The city has what we call a design standard manual, and developers use it. They have to follow it, development services and specs to it. But the standards are not nearly where they need to be. Right. And they were increased, I think, in the early 2000s, maybe, early 2000s. But Jeff Edmonds we're working on a redo of them. And we're going to have a consultant help us to look at best practices and what ours are, not just for streets, but things like sidewalks, a whole host of things that they develop. Yeah, exactly. So that'll be coming to council this year, this calendar year. Because we see it time and again. You see it. I bike in some of the new subdivisions, and the streets are deteriorating already. I'm like, really? The street's brand new. And then all the taxpayers have to pay for it while the developer's long gone. So we're bringing that back to council to beef those up for sure.
Okay, thank you so much. That's all I had, Mayor.
Okay, great. Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor. Just on that last discussion, were you talking about the master plans contract?
Well, we call it the design standard manual.
Okay, so this is a separate from the master plan, the consolidation of the master plans and the impact fee study, right?
Yes, okay,
It's
yeah,
separate.
it's separate from that,
Okay,
yes,
has
sir.
that
I
come
get
to
you.
us or is that a contract less than $50,000?
It hasn't come to council yet.
Okay.
Yeah, it will be. We're reviewing proposals that came in.
So as part of that was, and this
Actually,
kind of leads to my question, in
Task
terms of determining the difference in cost, were the possibility of different materials for stormwater considered?
They were not. It was straight up street versus street.
Okay, so the fact that maybe utilizing a different type of material like HDPE would be something that could be significant cost savings were not considered?
There would be cost savings for like a residential new development. There would be some cost savings in that area. Again, though, we've approved one subdivision at this time to move forward that way, and we want to ensure that we are investigating and inspecting how that long.
Is that something that can be added to this materials item to where we can look at HDP in a very professional way or by an engineering standards? So we can look at, see if that can be used beyond just residential streets?
There's always opportunities to put that in a review, yes.
Well, the reason I say that is because it could be significant cost savings just from if you're talking about the concrete piping, I mean, it costs a lot to transport it, costs a lot to install it. Then to take it out, it costs a lot.
So let me just give you an example on the residential street. So a residential street with a smaller HDPE pipe has less of a risk than an arterial with a large HDPE pipe because the structural loads that come onto that. And so
I understand that.
Yes, sir.
And,
yes, sir. So that would have to be
that's why these
evaluated.
pipes are made articulated, so you can kind of withstand some of those pressures.
Sure, and the bedding has to be a certain way and that kind of thing.
Correct.
So all
but
that needs to be
all that into
evaluated.
consideration, we need to evaluate that to ensure that we do have some aspect, and then this could be also considered into the cost factor.
When we're looking at our specs, I can work with our engineering department to have that reviewed at the same time.
And Jeff, you understand what I'm asking, right? I mean, right. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Martinez, thank you very much for this presentation.
Well,
I think.
Mayor, I still have 2 more questions.
Oh, goodness.
Sorry.
Okay.
Now, I wanted to ask you on the asphalt versus concrete. This is all under the assumption that we're on time with our maintenance, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so with that being said, I don't think we have ever been on time with our maintenance. Is that correct?
As before I got here, yes, sir.
Yes, right. So, and I'm not gonna, I don't think you're gonna be here forever.
Oh, we're running me off already. Councilman.
Just the normal course of things. I don't
Got
plan to
it.
be here forever.
Sure. Got it.
But, which is more forgiving on deferred maintenance, the concrete or the asphalt?
Concrete's more forgiving.
Concrete's more forgiving.
Now, it's more forgiving up front. Long term, it's cost way much more money to replace.
I understand that. We're looking at Walden Road, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't recall very much, if any, maintenance was done on Walden Road.
Yeah. Give you an example for years of service. So like an asphalt street, a brand new street gets in, we should be crack sealing in 2 years. You don't have to really joint seal a concrete street until 5 years. So that gives you some time.
Okay, so that's kind of where I'm getting at, because we have limited resources in terms of trying to get to every street in the city, and we're trying to catch up with what was all, dealing with the sins of the past. So I mean, you got to try to manage your resources, and I'm looking at what's the most forgiving thing you have, and I think from just your answers, the concrete, and I already knew, so.
Policy helps make those decisions.
Correct. But again, it's all based on what we have available funding-wise, right?
That's correct, sir.
And Councilman, in this budget, this fiscal year budget, Richard recommended and the council approved for the first time a maintenance plan for concrete. So we have how many million for the maintenance?
It's 1 million for the maintenance
1
of
million.
concrete.
So this will be the first time in the city's history that we have a maintenance program for concrete streets. So we recognize that.
Understood.
Thank you.
And did we take into consideration the intrusive nature of some of the maintenance that's done on asphalt and concrete through its lifespan to the commercial aspects around it, especially when you're talking about arterials?
Right.
Is that factored into this decision?
So that was one of them that our consultant looked at. When we looked at that timeline, what that cost would be for each application, there was timeline that was in there as well. It takes more. So if you saw a slide, I went through it pretty quick, but like to replace a panel was 7 days. There's cost in that panel replacement for those 7 days. What we didn't take into effect is what that affects to our citizens or businesses you're talking about. Maybe a loss of business. That was not taken into effect.
Okay. And that's kind of something we have to consider. I mean, it was something we
Yes.
factored, we expressly made concerns about with the reconstruction of Everhart. Right between Holly and SPID. Making sure that we don't close businesses down in the process of trying to fix our streets. So,
Street construction is really difficult, sir.
I understand.
But I will tell you that once it's done, like what you see in Everhart, I think our citizens are going to enjoy that roadway for many decades, sir.
Oh, yeah, and I'm enjoying it already.
It's bittersweet. And I know you guys really do a good job. It's difficult. You can't, you've got to have the cones. And it's going to be a little difficult, but in the end, like you said, everyone's beyond happy.
I've got to acknowledge Jeff Edmonds and his
Yes.
team for those projects like that, because they're not easy to undertake. And so his team does an awesome
I
job.
know. Thank you, Jeff.
To that.
And thank you to the team.
Last thing, Mayor, to that, if we could still consider overnight work as well. I know they do it in larger cities. We haven't done that here for any of the contracts I know of that we're doing now, but it might be something, if it's possible to, without disruption to residents, that maybe can work at night and give that opportunity to our contractors.
We can consider that. In other cities I worked for, when I did downtown areas, we did them at night. That was even maintenance.
I thought
So,
there
at night.
was a cost increase in that, but anyway,
There
we
is,
can,
but-
we
Thank
can
you.
go into that because there's always a cost increase for convenience. But either way, thank you very much for your presentation. A very good presentation. I believe that we have no executive sessions today. So with that, and there being no further business, I adjourn the meeting.
you.